At the beginning of the story, we meet a boy named Haruto, who was a hard-working player obsessed with winning. He created a group in a virtual reality game, and quickly became the strongest in that alternate world. However, because of a mistake he made, the girl he was in love with suffered a terrible end, which caused all his friends to abandon him. After that, he stopped playing for several years, until he decided to return to the same game and become powerful again, just to try to bring back the girl he had lost. Haruto, a high school student in present-day Japan, carried a painful secret. A few years earlier, a game called Union had been announced in Japan, accessible only to those who possessed a special power known as sensei, and Haruto was among the chosen ones. Even though he was still in elementary school, he quickly excelled at the game and created a close-knit group of friends they called Subaru. As the team leader, Haruto and his companions tackled the most difficult missions with ease, mainly because of a girl named Asahi, whose sensei allowed her to predict the movements of enemies and perfectly complemented Haruto's combat skills. Among his friends was Satsuki, who secretly harbored feelings for Haruto and suspected that he liked Asahi. One day, they heard about a dungeon that had never been conquered, considered impossible. Haruto, confident, encouraged his companions to explore it. Despite initial hesitation, everyone agreed and set a date for the expedition. Inside the dungeon, the journey went smoothly thanks to Asahi's predictions. They reached the final boss chamber and faced the monstrous enemy covered in steel. Asahi guided their movements while Haruto and Taka executed the plan, but the monster regenerated and created new difficulties. Despite Taka's warnings, Haruto recklessly lunged forward, and at the decisive moment, Asahi stepped in front of him and saved him from a fatal attack, sacrificing his own life. Her loss devastated them, and they discovered that once a player was eliminated, they could not return to the game. Asahi's sacrifice began to haunt them, and Taka blamed Haruto for his recklessness. Years passed, and Haruto, now in high school, completely distanced himself from the game that had destroyed so much. Then Reunion, a relaunch of Union, was announced. Haruto resisted at first, but eventually gave in to the requests of his classmates who needed a third player. When Haruto entered Reunion, he noticed changes in the game. While exploring, he was accompanied by two inexperienced classmates, a boy and a girl who wanted to tackle a low-level dungeon. Even though they were inexperienced, they insisted, and Haruto helped them when monsters appeared, saving them from tragedy. Moving on, they entered a room and found a large chest. His classmates asked Haruto to open it, and while they stood back, he opened the chest. An intense light filled the room, and when Haruto could see again, he saw an adult Asahi stepping out of the chest, with all her memories intact. Haruto was completely shocked to see her, and even more disturbed because she acted as if nothing had happened. At first he thought she was an imposter, and took her out of the dungeon to talk. She spoke cheerfully with him, but noticed that Haruto had changed and asked him why. Haruto hesitated to tell her the truth and began to question her. He asked what year it was, and Asahi replied with the same year she had been eliminated from the game, 6 years ago. Haruto told her that 6 years had passed, but she thought he was joking and laughed. Haruto couldn't take it anymore and told her about her elimination. She stared at him seriously, said he shouldn't joke about such things, and changed the subject. Haruto asked her to try to leave the game, and when she tried, she found she couldn't. This worried her because Haruto had shown he could leave easily if he wanted to. She asked about her former teammates, but Haruto explained that he hadn't spoken to them in 6 years, and didn't know if they were still playing. The news made Asahi sad because she couldn't understand how such a close-knit group had broken up. Before she could speak again, a group of men surrounded them, and a muscular guy stepped forward, saying that he had always believed that Asahi had been eliminated 6 years earlier, but that it seemed to have been just a rumor. Haruto didn't remember this man, but he seemed to know Haruto from the old days. Asahi, on the other hand, recognized him and tried to refresh Haruto's memory, reminding him that this guy always tried to disrupt the group because he wanted Asahi to join his team. But Haruto and the others were so strong that they easily overpowered him. Haruto finally remembered and recalled that his name was Leon, a persistent enemy who always appeared as a parody of a villain trying to steal Asahi from his team. Haruto told Leon to back off because he was still trying to understand the situation. Leon got angry, punched a rock, and shattered it, before charging forward at high speed and hitting Haruto in the stomach, knocking him to the ground. Leon laughed and asked if Haruto had completely lost his sense. Haruto got up, drew his sword, and prepared to fight, but before he could react, Leon threw another punch. Asahi shouted, warning him that the punch was fake fake and that he would actually try to kick him in the head. Haruto heard in time and managed to dodge, and Asahi counterattacked, forcing Leon to retreat. Leon regained his balance and began threatening them, saying he would finish them off and kick them out of the game if they didn't join his group and apologize. At that moment, Taka appeared, who had also returned to the game and was now part of one of the strongest guilds called Illuminati. Taka brought several subordinates and ordered Leon to retreat, otherwise he would remove him from the game forever. Leon didn't listen and advanced again, but Taka easily dodged and grabbed his face and used his special ability that tore all of Leon's clothes, causing him to flee in humiliation. Then Taka approached Haruto and asked if he had lost his sense, and Haruto replied evasively. He looked at Asahi and smiled, saying he missed her. They talked for a while and Taka asked Asahi to join him. She accepted excitedly and suggested that the three of them form a guild again, but Taka became serious and stated that he would only accept Asahi and would never work with Haruto again. Haruto just lowered his head while Taka criticized him once again and told Asahi not to help him because he was selfish. Asahi interrupted him and said she didn't want to go with him because he was being cruel. Taka left and said his doors would remain open to her and she should just call him if she needed help. Haruto left the game and lay on his bed thinking about everything that had happened. Soon he heard a knock on the door and his sister called him. When he opened it, he found Satsuki, who had grown a lot. She greeted him strangely and asked to talk. They went to his room and Satsuki revealed that she had also started playing Reunion and wanted to reconcile with him. Haruto was surprised and said that he had also played a little that day and had met Asahi. At first, Satsuki thought it was a bad joke and argued with him. But when Haruto told her the whole story, she said she would only believe it if she saw it for herself, and Haruto agreed to play with her once more. They entered the game again, and when they met, Haruto was accompanied by Asahi, which shocked Satsuki. Asahi asked several questions about where everyone had been all this time and why the group had broken up. Unable to control her emotions, Satsuki exploded and said that it was Asahi's fault because she had been eliminated trying to protect Haruto, which had also caused her demise in real life. Haruto asks Satsuki to back off a little, but Satsuki explains to Asahi that she still visits her grave every year and fears that seeing her friend at that moment is just a temporary glitch in the game that will soon disappear and bring even greater suffering. Suddenly, Haruto notices something strange and raises his sword to deflect an arrow coming toward the group. Soon after, several men surround them again and demand that they hand over Asahi. But this time Satsuki advances with a whip and unleashes several magical elements at once, which surprises her opponents because even excellent magicians usually only handle 2 or 3 elements, while Satsuki masters them all at the same time. Satsuki manages to contain him alone and asks Haruto and Asahi to return to the old base. The three return and are immersed in memories as they rediscover the objects from 6 years ago preserved by time. While the two search for more things, Haruto goes down alone to the reflecting pool and notices a mysterious shadow approaching, which reveals itself to be a fantastical-looking woman named Alicia. Alicia claims she can read his mind, but makes it clear that she has not come to hurt anyone, but rather to warn him that many people are also after Asahi and will remain in the shadows until the ideal moment to act. Haruto is stunned and does not understand where Alicia came from or where she went. He feels he needs a break and goes back to rest when he hears Asahi and Satsuki arguing loudly. Haruto hides in the corner and eavesdrops on their conversation. He hears Satsuki tell Asahi to stay away from Haruto because when Asahi was eliminated 6 years ago, Haruto was the one who suffered the most in the group. And although he couldn't show it, he broke down inside, stopped being who he was, and nothing could bring him back. Satsuki says that when Asahi was eliminated, a part of Haruto was also lost, and she doesn't want to see him hurt again because he might not be able to bear the pain. Asahi is very upset, but before she can respond, Haruto steps between them and asks them to stop. Haruto says he is fine, and directly asks them to take care of themselves and leave him alone. Then he simply ends the game session. The next day, Satsuki shows up at Haruto's door again. Haruto welcomes her, and Satsuki apologizes for the previous day and says she just wanted to protect him. Satsuki says she cares deeply about Asahi, and that the last thing she wants is to see her disappear again. But she also cares about Haruto just as much, and can't bear to see him suffer all the time. Haruto thanks her for her concern, and Satsuki suddenly Asahi takes a ring out of her pocket, which immediately brings back memories for Haruto. Haruto remembers when they all went to an arcade and bought matching rings to represent the group's connection and identity. Haruto has an idea, and the two run to the cemetery where Asahi was buried. Haruto begins to dig up the grave and luckily is not caught, managing to recover a ring because he remembers that on the last day he and Asahi exchanged rings and promised to protect each other. They return, and Haruto decides that no matter what it takes, he will win the game and find a way to preserve Asahi and discover why she reappeared at that moment. The next day they enter the game again, and Asahi convinces Haruto to help her on a mission to obtain a rare sap from a special tree in the forest. They work together and cut down these trees one by one, enemies that are not very strong and that thanks to Asahi's predictions become manageable. The problem is that the drop rate for the desired item is very low, and most trees do not release sap when defeated. Asahi decides to use herself as bait, and as predicted, a monstrous tree envies and grabs her. Haruto reacts quickly, runs to the creature and cuts off the arm that was holding Asahi. Asahi aims accurately and neutralizes the tree with a well-aimed shot to the head, and to her delight the creature finally drops the much-desired sap. Asahi falls into the lake below, but when Haruto goes down to check on her, he is relieved to see that she is fine and has the sap in her hand. They return to the city, and Asahi takes him to a blacksmith's workshop, where she transforms the sap into a ring. Haruto is surprised to realize that the model is the same team ring they used to wear when they were younger, and Asahi declares that she wants to make 3 units so that the 3 of them can wear them again as they did in the past. Asahi tries to give the ring to Haruto, but Haruto asks her to keep it and ends up putting the ring on her ring finger. Satsuki witnesses the scene and becomes jealous of Asahi receiving all the attention. She flies into the forest and returns after a while with sap, which she also transforms into a ring, hoping that Haruto will repeat the gesture with her, but this does not happen. Satsuki is embarrassed and quickly puts the ring on herself. Haruto then devises a plan to find out what happened and how to bring Asahi back safely. He returns to the cave where Asahi was eliminated, and together with the 2 girls, enters again to try to defeat the boss, even though the decision is risky. On the previous occasion, when they were at their peak with 6 members, they failed and lost a companion, and now with half the group the threat remains considerable. They advance along the same paths and finally reach the point where the boss had appeared last time, but nothing happens. Suddenly, Asahi senses a presence, and they all turn in time to see the fantastical-looking young woman disappear back into the shadows, leaving behind enigmatic words. From the same darkness, the monster reappears in all its might. Memories of the past flood the 3 of them. Fear grows, and they try to retreat, but the boss throws swords toward the entrance, knocks down the ceiling, and completely blocks the exit. The enemy begins to throw a series of blades which they manage to dodge, and this time Satsuki decides to face the creature seriously. Satsuki summons her most powerful magic, combining all the elements and concentrating everything into a gigantic beam launched at the boss. But to everyone's frustration, the enemy has an arcane barrier that prevents the magic from passing through. The boss raises his sword and strikes Satsuki, who tries to dodge but fails and is hit in the legs, leaving her stunned and unable to move. Haruto rushes to protect her, but the boss throws him violently, and he too is trapped under the rubble. The enemy slowly advances to defeat Haruto, but Asahi intervenes once again and starts shooting to contain him. Haruto asks her to step back so as not to put herself at risk again, but Asahi remains in front and fires shots above the boss's head, causing the ceiling to collapse on the creature and gaining a few moments. In the process, Asahi is hit and is also stunned, unable to move her legs. The boss rises again, and Haruto blames himself for his own weakness and almost accepts defeat until he notices a glint on the floor and finds a fallen ring. Haruto remembers that the ring had slipped from his hand in the previous battle. He feels his strength renewed, picks up the ring and puts it on. The monster tries to attack Asahi, but Haruto intercepts the blow and cuts off the creature's arm. He then summons the spirit lion, which charges at the enemy and causes serious injuries, and then Haruto uses his special ability with multiple blows in the air, destroying the boss once and for all. Haruto and his 2 companions leave the dungeon and celebrate their victory. But suddenly Asahi becomes dizzy and collapses. The 3 then see flashes of old memories belonging to Asahi, in which she appears in a completely different place, observed by people in lab coats. When the vision ends, Haruto asks what it meant, and Asahi says she doesn't know because she has no memories of these events. They head to the inn where they are staying, and as soon as they enter, everyone turns to comment on whether they are really the revered group or if they are imposters, and if they really defeated the monsters in the dungeon. Haruto decides to completely ignore the comments and leads the 2 to their room, where where they rest for a moment. Asahi remains determined to reunite the entire former team under the same banner, but Haruto explains that they don't even know if Clive and Nozomi still play. Satsuki says she has several informants who can help find out where the former teammates are and if they are still playing. The next day, everyone goes out to find these informants and see if there is any information about the other two members, but on the way they encounter several people running in panic. When they ask why, the people reply that the guild known as Solder Cross has been spotted nearby and they don't want any trouble with them, so they are running away. Haruto considers retreating, as he doesn't want any trouble right now, since he knows Solder Cross from the old days as one of the guilds that tried to forcibly recruit Asahi but never succeeded. Satsuki insists that the informants are very close and that it won't take long, so Haruto agrees to continue. They enter a valley and suddenly Haruto senses something wrong, and soon the leader of Solder Cross appears from behind a rock. They quickly realize that they are completely surrounded by thousands of guild members. The leader had intercepted the informants and lured them there in order to capture Asahi. Haruto orders him to back off, and Satsuki tries to draw her whip, but immediately a volley of arrows falls near her as a warning not to move. The leader states that there is no way out, and that the best option would be to hand Asahi over peacefully and return without causing any trouble. Haruto firmly refuses and rejects the proposal. He tries to find a way to escape from that situation, when suddenly several men dressed in blue appear behind the members of Solder Cross and take them hostage. Haruto recognizes them as members of the Brile Society, whose former leader had a great rivalry with Haruto and his group, and also wanted to take Asahi. The new leader of the Brile Society orders the leader of Solder Cross to retreat, as Haruto and his companions are now under his temporary protection. The leader of Solder Cross hesitates, but seeing that he is at a disadvantage, he accepts and withdraws his troops. The leader of the Brile Society approaches Haruto and asks if they are okay. Haruto replies that they are, but questions what his plans are and why he decided to protect them. The leader explains that the former boss may have had a rivalry with Haruto and his friends, but that he does not feel the same way because he has no reason to. He says he only appeared to offer them the opportunity to join his guild, where they could protect Asahi. According to him, Asahi represents something that should not exist in that game, but still exists, which makes the structure of the world unstable. Any incident could upset the balance and cause the game to collapse. He wants to prevent that from happening. Asahi, however, replies that she does not intend to join any guild because she already has her own and relies on it to protect her when necessary. The leader says they are making a mistake, but he will not force anyone, as that could also affect the balance of the game. So he says goodbye and calls his troops back. Haruto and his companions return to the inn, and both he and Satsuki end the session. The next day, Haruto invites Satsuki for a walk because he needs to buy new hardware for his computer, and Satsuki eagerly accepts. They go to the mall, do some shopping, and then decide to have lunch together, which makes Satsuki even happier. Haruto, however, talks about Asahi the whole time, which makes Satsuki feel left out and ruins her mood, causing her to leave. The next day, they log back into the game, and Haruto finds the two at the inn. They begin to discuss the visions they had when they left the dungeon and how they might be connected to Asahi. She says she tries to remember often, but her last clear memory is the moment she threw herself in front of the energy beam to save Haruto. The group spends a lot of time thinking about how to recover her memories until Haruto has an idea. He asks Asahi where she first used her premonition powers, and she replies that it was in the Sky Tower early on when everyone was still weak. Haruto says they need to go there because it might help her remember. They head towards the tower, and upon entering, they face some monsters that once seemed strong, but are now just a nuisance. They walk through the corridors filled with memories, and, after defeating the smaller creatures, arrive at the boss room. The enemy is a huge robot, and Haruto remembers when they faced it in the past and thought it was impossible to defeat. This time, however, the robot seems fragile before them. Asahi shoots and destroys one of the machine's arms while Haruto advances and cuts off the other arm. Then Satsuki uses her fire magic to burn the robot completely, which takes them to the second level where the robot releases a large amount of steam that reduces visibility. Haruto recalls that last time the steam caught them off guard, and that they only won because Satsuki used light magic to dispel the fog. Haruto asks her to do the same, but suddenly Satsuki is hit by a rope that comes out of the robot, is paralyzed, and disappears in the middle of the steam, which scares Haruto. He asks Asahi to fire a round of flares, and Asahi fires, lifting the steam. With the field visible, Haruto uses his furious blows to completely destroy the robot. They head to the roof, and Asushi decides to use a teleportation crystal to leave, but suddenly notices a mysterious red gem among her items. She shows it to Haruto, who also doesn't know what it is. At that moment, Taka teleports to the roof with members of his guild and takes the gem from Asushi's hands. She protests and asks for it back, but Taka says the gem shouldn't be with her. He then turns to Haruto and asks if he intends to eliminate Asahi, which Haruto promptly denies, but it is clear that Taka wants to fight. He creates a sphere of isolation and challenges Haruto to a duel. Taka advances and tries to punch Haruto, who manages to block but is still thrown back by the force. Taka tells Haruto that Asahi is real and that he cares about her, stating that he is willing to remain in that world to be by her side. He declares that the real world lost all meaning the day Asahi left, and that now his life is in reunion, where Asahi is still alive and that he will never log out. Haruto realizes how risky these plans are and says that they should also consider Asahi's feelings, not just their own desires. He says that if Taka really wants to see her happy, he should recreate the guild with them. This enrages Taka, who tries to strike Haruto, and Haruto reacts in kind, but before the confrontation can take place, the isolation sphere breaks. Satsuki had broken the barrier with her magic, and Asahi also points a gun at Taka, asking him to stay away from Haruto. Taka is devastated and retreats. Asahi then asks him once again to join them and help recreate the old guild, because with his support they could achieve something greater. They even manage to find clues about Klee and Nozomi, but Taka claims he has no idea about either of them and declares that he will never join forces with Haruto. Taka and the other members of the Illuminati retreat and teleport away. Haruto and Satsuki also say goodbye that day and leave the game. The next day, Haruto logs in early and travels with Asahi to different continents using special teleportation points to find informants and ask for news about Klee and Nozomi. They travel across several continents and ask countless questions, but no one seems to know anything about these names, as they are not registered in any territory. Then they go to the edge of a forest and wait for Satsuki to arrive to continue their journey. They try to find more teleportation points but are unable to, so they decide to walk to the next continent through a fog-covered forest.
At first, they enjoy the beauty of the place, but as the fog becomes denser, the atmosphere becomes increasingly uncomfortable. Suddenly, Satsuki stops and asks everyone to get ready. She says there are more than 100 enemies with magic pointed at them. Haruto says he would have sensed their presence, but Satsuki replies that the fog is intertwined with a very strong spell that completely obscures the enemy's location. Haruto sheaths his sword, but before he can act, everyone ends up separated. He finds himself surrounded by people belonging to both the Brill Guild and the Satyr Cross. Haruto is confused until the leader, Letos, steps forward and informs him that Satyr Cross, the Brill family, and the Illuminati have joined forces to take Asahi back from him. Haruto becomes enraged and challenges Letos to a duel. He rushes towards his opponent and with a single blow breaks Letos's shield in half, making the enemy realize that he cannot defeat him alone. Haruto continues to press forward and tries to land another blow, but Letos dodges, counterattacks with a kick, and orders his companions to shoot arrows at Haruto. Haruto blocks the attacks as he advances until an arrow shot from behind passes him and hits Letos's shoulder, completely nullifying his abilities. Haruto turns and sees Alicia with a bow, who explains that her special ability is to nullify magic and that if her arrows hit someone, they seal the target's senses. Letos orders his men to attack, but Alicia shoots an arrow into the air that splits into hundreds and falls on the hordes of enemies, sealing their abilities and rendering them useless. Meanwhile, Taka takes Asahi to a secluded place and states that he cannot allow Haruto to stay with her because he would not be able to protect her. Asahi insists again that he recreate the old guild, but Taka refuses. Asahi also refuses to go with him, so Taka imprisons her in a capsule and releases a gas that renders her unconscious. He releases her from her prison and approaches her, but suddenly some supposed members of his guild rush towards Asahi and grab her. Taka becomes angry and orders them to release her, but discovers that they are imposters and do not belong to his guild. They quickly surround Taka and immobilize him, while others take Asahi and flee. Haruto and Satsuki return to the inn, where big news is announced. The leaders of the Brill Society and Southern Cross have joined forces to form the strongest guild in the game, both in power and numbers, and have betrayed the Illuminati in the end to capture Asahi for themselves. The new union is now called the Divine Guild. Haruto gets up, checks his equipment, and tells Satsuki that he is going to rescue Asahi. Satsuki, aware of the danger, asks him to think twice, because the Divine Guild now has more than 3,000 members and he will never be able to fight so many alone. She suggests that he collaborate with Taka, but Haruto refuses and tells her to stay because he will probably lose his life. He explains that if he is defeated before saving Asahi, Satsuki should join forces with Taka, since without Haruto in the picture, Taka will probably help. Haruto finally arrives on the battlefield and sees an entire army waiting for him, alone in front of everyone. He looks up at the sky one last time, accepts that he may not survive, and rushes toward the enemy forces. Meanwhile, Satsuki looks for Taka to talk, believing that this is the only way to help Haruto. Taka agrees to talk, and when she asks what he is doing to save Asahi, he replies that the combined strength of Brill and Sidar Cross is too great and that they have twice the number of men as the Illuminati. He states that he is planning cautiously, waiting for the perfect opportunity because he cannot take any risks. Satsuki gets angry and says that Asahi's kidnapping was his fault. She yells that Haruto has always managed to protect her, but the one time Haruto wasn't there, Taka failed and allowed Asahi to be taken by those she trusted. Taka is surprised but does not admit his mistake, replying that this time he will plan perfectly to rescue Asahi in one fell swoop. Satsuki retorts that Haruto is already on the battlefield fighting alone to save Asahi while Taka remains seated devising plans. Taka replies that this is good because then Haruto will also be eliminated, which will make his life much easier. He says it would be better to let Haruto be defeated in the game, because then he would never be able to attend meetings again, would never see Asahi again, and would leave for good. He adds that this way all of Haruto's attention would turn to Satsuki, while he himself would remain in this world with Asahi without having to compete with Haruto for her attention. Satsuki looks at him with disgust and says that Asahi is her friend and that she will do anything to save her. She declares that if Taka doesn't have the courage to help, she will go alone to help Haruto, because she is determined and not a coward like him. At that moment, Haruto is already destroying the enemy ranks one after another. He is much stronger than any opponent, but the massive number of opponents begins to cause problems. The magicians positioned at the top of the fortress join forces and launch a devastating magical explosion at Haruto, who is unable to dodge it. The explosion creates a huge crater, and everyone believes that Haruto has been defeated. However, when the dust clears, his silhouette is still standing. He advances again and continues to destroy the army alone. Soon, Haruto faces enemies who surround him and tell him to surrender, as he is wounded, exhausted, and unable to save Asahi. Haruto ignores the taunts, but ends up trapped by magical chains that lift him into the air, completely immobilized. The enemies laugh, and the commander orders them to defeat him while he is vulnerable. They advance, and Haruto himself begins to accept defeat, but suddenly several electric arrows fall and break the chains that bind him. To his complete surprise, Taka appears before them, followed by Satsuki, and the three stand side by side in the middle of the enemy army. Taka looks at Haruto and reminds him that he is there to save Asahi, not to save him. Haruto nods in agreement. Taka asks how many enemies are left, and Haruto replies that there are about 1,500, since he was only able to eliminate half of the army on his own. Haruto and Taka then begin to fight in sync, combining their special abilities and quickly neutralizing the remaining half of the enemy forces. They knock down anyone who gets in their way and run towards the huge gate of the fortress. Joining forces once again, they launch a joint attack that completely shatters the entrance. They enter a huge corridor that leads to a stadium, where they find countless enemies gathered alongside Letos and Angelos, the leaders of the Brill Society and the Southern Cross. Taka notices Asahi unconscious in Angelos's arms and feels his blood boil at the sight of the girl he loves being carried by another man. He lunges forward with a powerful punch, but everyone around him manages to dodge it, which surprises him, since his speed was so extreme that theoretically no one should have been able to escape. Angelos immediately attacks Taka, but Taka dodges and tries to steady himself on the ground, being forced to jump repeatedly when thorns appear under his feet. No matter how much he teleports, he is always attacked the moment he touches the ground. Haruto is also confused by what he sees, but Satsuki explains that Angelos is probably invading Asahi's mind, and since she can see the future, he ends up gaining that power through her. Suddenly, Taka is trapped by a red energy beam from which he cannot free himself, no matter how hard he tries. Angelos orders Letos to finish him off while he is immobilized, but when Letos approaches, Haruto goes on the attack. Letos, however, manages to dodge and counterattack, pushing Haruto back. Haruto responds with an air slash, but Letos blocks it, surprising him. Meanwhile, Satsuki tries to wake Asahi by calling his name, but Angelos interrupts her, saying it's useless, and creates ice spears that hit her, knocking her down. Satsuki, however, decides that she has been saved too many times, and that this time she will not just be the damsel in distress. She unleashes all her power, floats in the sky surrounded by an immense aura, and summons all the elemental kings around her. She asks them to grant
grant her their energies and creates an extremely strong magic circle that absorbs all the magical aura from the stadium and neutralizes the enemy members along with it. The magic nullifies the spells on the field and frees Taka, which frightens Letos, who asks Angelos for a new plan. Angelos says there is no reason to worry, as they will use the emergency plan which will work anyway. Letos sighs with relief, but is surprised when Angelos creates a sphere of dark energy and thrusts it into his stomach. The power corrupts Letos, who is overcome by dark magic and enters a state of rage. He lunges forward and strikes the ground with his sword, sending a shockwave that throws Haruto and Taka away. At that moment, Asahi awakens, interrupting Angelos's ability to see the future, but she is so exhausted that she can barely move. Satsuki has also used up almost all of her strength and can only cast one spell at a time.
Asahi shouts for everyone to fight as they did before, to remember the meaning they shared 6 years ago. He emphasizes the importance of technique and synergy, stating that no one can defeat them when they are united. The rings worn by the three begin to glow and awaken their dormant senses. They decide to bet everything on a final attack. Satsuki distorts space with her Taka, manipulates time magic, and Haruto with his ethereal sword breaks through space and time, delivering countless blows against the enraged Letos, who is unable to move and is defeated instantly. Satsuki runs to Asahi, while Haruto faces Angelus. Angelus tries to escape, but Taka appears behind him and knocks him down with a direct punch, and Satsuki finishes him off using her fire magic to neutralize him for good. Asahi asks Taka to give her the red gem, as she wants to try to revisit the visions that are her only memories. Taka hesitates, but she promises she won't lose consciousness, and he finally gives it to her. As she concentrates, the gem projects blurry memories to everyone, showing people in white robes discussing her abilities and how they could use them. Taka is surprised and questions what it means, but Asahi admits she doesn't know. She just feels that it happened during the 6 years she was missing. She is determined to discover the truth behind these memories. Asahi asks Taka once again to join their guild, but he refuses, saying that he is not yet worthy of it and that he needs to become stronger before he can face her. He looks at Haruto and asks him not to be defeated before he himself has a chance to defeat him, and then leaves. Soon after, Haruto, Asahi, and Satsuki set out to find a legendary treasure in a dangerous sea zone. They board the ship of pirate Captain Alvida, known as the only one brave enough to cross the stormy sea called the Lost Pentagon. Haruto had heard rumors that an unbreakable sword lay at the bottom of that sea, and Alvida confirms this, but warns that recovering it is nearly impossible and that everyone who has tried has failed. The ship reaches the region permanently covered by black clouds and fog. Alvida provides them with a boat and recommends that they not stay underwater for too long, as they will quickly lose vitality. They decide to dive without protective equipment, using a spirit of light from Satsuki as a torch. At the bottom they find ancient ruins, and Haruto realizes his vital energy is diminishing, signaling to his friends that they need to ascend. When they emerge, they complain that the area is too large to explore completely, but Asahi points to a spot that seems suspicious to him. They follow the indication and find a sword stuck in the seabed. It is not an ordinary sword, but Pleiades, Haruto's ancient weapon, one of the most powerful in the world. Haruto feels that it is indeed his sword and not an imitation, and Asahi asks him to pull it out quickly. He grabs the blade, which begins to glow, but the ground shakes and a giant sea serpent monster emerges with the sword stuck in its head. Satsuki recognizes the creature as Igor, the boss of that region. Asahi looks at the monster's red eyes and comments that it seems to be possessed by the same fury as the previous enemies. The beast attacks, and Haruto blocks with his aura, but is easily repelled. Asahi fires at the monster, but his attack does not penetrate its thick shell. When Igor is about to swallow her, a dagger is thrown into its mouth, expanding and preventing it from closing. Satsuki takes the opportunity to rescue Asahi, and then they realize that the one who threw the weapon was their old friend Clive. Everyone is shocked to see him as Clive stares at Igor and goes into combat. He throws his daggers at the creature's eyes to blind it, and signals his companions to return to the surface. When they board Alvida's ship, Clive is no longer there, leaving only a message that he had business to attend to, and that they would meet again soon. Haruto and the others are surprised by his sudden appearance and disappearance, but realize that this is exactly Clive's style. The next day, Haruto and Satsuki visit Taka in the real world. He flaunts his inherited wealth and says he will compensate them for the previous attack. Satsuki surprises him by ordering the entire dessert menu and not sharing anything with anyone. After the meal, Taka changes the tone and says he needs to talk about Asahi, asking if they haven't noticed anything strange since she returned. Satsuki notes that the rumors were spreading unusually fast, and Taka claims that the largest union guild called Ganosa
Gnosis was behind it. Gnosis was a secretive and untrustworthy guild with influence even in the real world, and Haruto and Satsuki find it hard to believe that they were trying to get everyone to persecute Asahi within the game. Taka wants to protect her but also asks them to keep this a secret from her. After that, Satsuki says that Pleiades was trapped in Igor's head and explains how Clive disappeared right after saving them. Taka is skeptical and suspects that the red stone, which triggers painful memories in Asahi's visions, is the key to unraveling the mysteries surrounding the group. He presents a hypothesis that Asahi's body is still alive in the real world, and that scientists are conducting experiments on her. Haruto and Satsuki are shaken to hear this, and Taka himself acknowledges that the hypothesis sounds extreme. At that moment, Taka's butler enters to report that they have located Nozomi's address, and Taka is uneasy because he does not want the guests to find out that he is looking for his former companions. He claims that he is only doing this to make Asahi happy and that he does not intend to reunite Subaru.
Later, Haruto and Satsuki re-enter the game and together with Asahi try to recover Pleiades again. The second attempt also fails, and as they lament the result, Clive appears to greet them. The reunion is awkward because he avoids answering questions about the previous encounter and says they will talk about real life later. Clive claims that he was also looking for Igor and found them by coincidence. The friends believe him, but Alvida is suspicious. Clive shows them a rare item that allows them to breathe and move freely underwater and throws it into the sea before they dive. A protective film forms around the group, and then the sea serpent Igor appears before them. Following the plan, Haruto attacks first and pierces the creature with all his strength, eliciting a roar of pain. Clive then throws his daggers at the monster, and Asahi enhances the impact with his shots. The combination creates a web of threads around the serpent, and Clive restrains it. With Haruto's help, he pulls the creature out of the sea, and everyone returns to the surface. Satsuki freezes the monster and the surrounding water with powerful ice magic. Haruto approaches to free Pleiades from the frozen body of the sea dragon, but the moment he touches the sword, Clive stabs him in the back. Haruto turns around and sees a strange smile, then collapses. Satsuki and Asahi are shocked to see him fall, and Asahi panics, involuntarily activating her premonitory ability. Haruto wakes up in a hospital bed without understanding how he got there, and then Asahi enters the room and hugs him, saying through tears that he will be fine. Haruto still does not understand the situation. Asahi explains that 6 years earlier he would have received a game over in Union while trying to protect Nozomi, who in the real world fell into a coma after the incident. Haruto knows that this does not correspond to what he experienced because Asahi was eliminated while protecting him in that attack, but now she is alive in front of him. Soon the other friends also appear, happy with the reunion. Haruto asks about the game Reunia, but they say they have never heard that name. Not understanding what is happening, already at night when he feels his sanity wavering, he sees a hologram of Alicia appear in the room. Haruto asks what is going on, and Alicia explains that at that moment he is inside a world created by Asahi's ability. She clarifies that the use of the senses is not limited to the virtual environment, and that they can also be used outside of it. Asahi's ability was not only to see the future, but to choose between possible futures, something she had not yet realized. Shortly before, when Haruto was hit from behind by what appeared to be Clive, Asahi subconsciously activated her ability. She chose this world in which she is not eliminated, and Haruto remains in a coma as the only way to prevent him from playing Reunio and avoid her ultimate defeat. Haruto finds it hard to believe, and Alicia goes on to say that Reunio was not just a game but also a laboratory and training ground for people to awaken and hone their senses for use in real life. Still, all of this would be secondary because Unio and Reunio were developed with the primary goal of awakening Asahi's ability. Alicia states that the Gnosis Guild created Unione to obtain this power. They subjected Asahi to severe psychological stress to force the awakening of her ability, and thus she ended up creating that world. When she finishes her explanation, Alicia's time runs out, and the hologram disappears. But before she does, she tells Haruto that he is the point of singularity, and only he can save Asahi. Haruto wonders what he should do, and distracted, picks up the ring without noticing that the mirror in the room is starting to malfunction. The next day, Asahi visits him and recalls the promise made before the accident. She remembers asking Haruto to promise that they would protect each other, and for that, they exchanged rings in the game and planned to repeat the gesture in real life. Asahi says that this would be a good time to exchange rings outside the game, but Haruto feels that something is wrong. He says that Asahi has already saved him twice, but that he cannot accept that world. Haruto says he needs to return to the real world to protect her, and the scenery begins to malfunction. Asahi laughs, unsure of what he means, but believes him. They hold hands, and the rings act as catalysts that propel him through the dimension back to the world he came from. Haruto arrives at the meeting, and just before Cleave strikes, summons his sword to stop the attack. The two assume a fighting stance, and Haruto is glad to see Satsuki and Asahi safe. Satsuki confronts the man who appears to be Cleve and asks why he attacked her friend, and the man claims that he has changed in 6 years and is now an enemy of Subaru. Haruto, however, is certain that Cleve would never betray his companions, and realizes that the man before them is not Cleve, but an imitator shapeshifter. Haruto attacks. His opponent blocks the blade but cannot avoid the aura-charged punch that knocks the wind out of him and undoes the transformation. The imposter returns to his original form and uses a magic circle in his hand to control Igor. He mounts the sea serpent, introduces himself as Simon, the 6th emissary of the Gnosis Guild, and declares that he will defeat them right there. Simon activates his ability, merges with the serpent, and takes on a monstrous form, firing a beam of energy at Haruto and his companions. Satsuki raises a protective barrier, but the shield breaks and the impact throws the group back. The merged creature then launches its own arms as projectiles, and Satsuki raises another barrier to protect herself and her friends. Simon persists with his attacks and breaks through the defenses. In the resulting smoke, he captures Satsuki and threatens to crush her if Haruto reacts, demanding that Asahi awaken her power to save her friend. Asahi begins to concentrate her ability, but a rain of daggers cuts off the monster's limbs and frees Satsuki. Haruto supports her, and realizes that Alvida has come to their rescue, although he understands at that moment that she is not who she appears to be. The pirate captain transforms and reveals that she was actually the real Clive all along, and Haruto recognizes his friend by his characteristic gesture. Clive confronts the imposter who was imitating him and makes it clear that usurping someone else's identity will not go unpunished. They prepare for battle again, but before anyone attacks, Simon creates a giant magic circle that covers the sky. He summons thousands of lightning bolts against his enemies, and Haruto protects Asahi, enduring the attack until the end. The monster is impressed, but claims that Satsuki and Clive have perished in his attack. To his surprise, Clive suddenly appears and attacks him, and soon after, he and Satsuki appear, revealing that they survived by combining their abilities. Simon is shocked. Clive transforms the knives he had thrown at the monster into hooks, and Haruto understands the plan. He throws Asahi into the air and she shoots at the hook, activating the ability to trap any creature. The fused monster falls onto the frozen sea, and Haruto takes the chance to pull his sword, but it is stuck fast. He then has an idea and asks his friends for their cooperation. Satsuki and Clive channel their energies to him. Asahi concentrates her power and sends it to the sword, charging it with the combined strength of everyone. The blade begins to glow and Haruto unleashes his ultimate blow, destroying Simon and the sea serpent from within. After a flash, the enemies are destroyed, and Haruto and the girls reunite with Clive on the ship. Before they talk about the past, Clive shows them the red crystal that appeared after Igor's defeat. Asahi holds it, and another memory of hooded scientists performing experiments on her invades her mind. In this memory, Alice appears to rescue her. She defeats the scientists and seals Asahi's senses with her ability. Soon after, a red crystal sphere comes out of Asahi's body and shatters into several pieces. The vision ends, and everyone understands that the red stones linked to the memories are fragments of that sphere. The group finds Taka, who is suspicious of Clive and attacks him to test his abilities. Realizing that Clive easily overpowers him, Taka accepts that he is not an imposter. Haruto and the others tell him everything that happened at sea and show him the Pleiades sword as proof. Taka finds it hard to believe but takes them to the guild's base. There, Clive tells them that the woman who saved Asahi is named Alicia, and that he had been working with her to protect her from the shadows. Haruto says he has already found her, which arouses jealousy in Satsuki and Asahi, who demand that he reveal everything he knows about her. Haruto explains that he has met her a few times and recounts how he was sent to another world created by Asahi to save his life and how he met Alicia there. He repeats her words about Asahi's true power. No one believes that her ability can choose a suitable future. Taka argues with Haruto. Clive just laughs, remembering that they also fought in the past. He insists that the most important thing now is to protect Asahi. Since the Gnosis Guild is pursuing her, everyone in Subaru must awaken their powers to defend her. Satsuki reminds them that the group is still incomplete without Nozomi, and says she wants to see her. Taka gives them the address but says he can't go because Nozomi has always been shy and nervous around him. He thinks she's afraid of him. He doesn't realize that she actually likes him, which irritates Satsuki and Asahi. In the real world, Haruto and Satsuki visit Nozomi at her house and find her at the gate. She has changed a lot since the old days and invites them to talk at a cafe. Nozomi says that she now works as a model, and that after changing schools, she worked hard to change and gained popularity when when she gained confidence. Nozomi replies that she can't because she stopped playing after Asahi left in that accident. Haruto and Satsuki claim that Asahi is still alive in Reunion, but Nozomi refuses to believe it. They try to convince her to see for herself, but they can't. Later, everyone except Nozomi is in the game, gathered at the old base where they comment on how much she has changed. Satsuki asks Taka to go see her next time, saying that she will definitely listen if he asks her. Taka doesn't like the idea, but Asahi insists, and he ends up agreeing. At that moment, an event notification pops up, and Satsuki reads that it's something called a sweet dance party, a dance within the game for lonely players. The description promises a romantic evening where eternal love will blossom between couples, and Satsuki and Asahi know what they want. In the real world, Satsuki is anxious and nervous about the party, so she logs into the game early and calls Haruto privately. She wants him to ask her to the dance, and blushes as she says it. Haruto is surprised, but Satsuki can no longer hold back her feelings and confesses that she has liked him since elementary school. Seeing that he is in shock and unable to respond, she asks him to take as much time as he needs. Haruto can't get those words out of his head and looks at old photos of the two of them, but he receives a message from Taka, asking him to go to Asahi's grave immediately. When Haruto arrives, Taka declares that he will ask Asahi to go to the dance with him, and wanted to at least warn his rival. Haruto pretends not to care, and tells him to do whatever he wants. Taka hates this attitude, and hits him. Haruto questions the reason and tries to fight back, but is easily overpowered. Taka claims to be better than Haruto in everything inside and outside the game. He declares that he always thinks about Asahi, and wants to protect her smile, but she chose Haruto over him. Taka is enraged when he remembers that she sacrificed her life for Haruto, and wishes he had left that day. Haruto explodes with anger and yells that Taka doesn't think about what Asahi really wants. They fight, and Taka knocks him down hard, saying that he has always loved Asahi, and now just wants to make her happy. Haruto gets up and replies that Asahi only sees him as a friend, and that he just wants Subaru to be united again. Taka tries to hit him, but Haruto blocks the blow and declares that he also loves Asahi, striking back. Taka is speechless after the declaration, and says he will give up on her now. He admits that it always annoyed him that Haruto never expressed his feelings, but now that he has made him confess, he feels satisfied. Haruto walks away after hearing this, and Taka removes Subaru's rings from his locket, burying one of them in Asahi's grave, and promising that he will get over it. Inside the game, the night of the dance finally arrives, and Satsuki eagerly awaits Haruto. He apologizes and says he can't accompany her. She replies that she understands and asks him to go to Asahi. As soon as he leaves, she starts to cry, but Taka appears and tells her that he also asked Asahi to dance, and was rejected. Satsuki comments that he doesn't seem so upset, and he replies that he has matured after his fight with Haruto. He offers to be her partner for the night, since they have both lost in the battle for love, and she accepts. Meanwhile, Haruto enters the dance hall and pushes through the crowd until he finds Asahi. He asks her to dance, and she happily accepts. The two surrender to the moment, lost in each other's gaze. In the real world, unaware of the love triangles forming in their circle of friends, Nozomi recalls the moment she fell in love with Taka, back in elementary school, when he was kind and helped her with cleaning tasks after everyone else abandoned her. Moved by this feeling, she decides to join the game. Upon arriving at the hall, she looks for her friends, but as soon as she finds Taka dancing with Satsuki, her heart breaks. She starts crying, runs outside, and ends up alone in an empty place. Suddenly, the place around Nozomi begins to malfunction as if it were a programming error, and she finds herself in a dark and strange hall. Nozomi wonders where she is when a woman with her face covered and a clown appear to welcome her. They introduce themselves as members of Genius and mock her for being surpassed by her own friend while she trembles in fear before the clown. A few days later, Haruto and Satsuki meet in the real world. He feels strange seeing her, but she is calmer now that she has cried a lot over the past few days. They meet up with Taka outside Nozomi's house, and Satsuki tells them that she received a call from Nozomi's mother, saying that her daughter had suddenly disappeared. They ask her mother for details, but she only knows that Nozomi left her virtual reality headset on the table before leaving. Taka accesses the device and discovers that Nozomi had logged in only once, 2 days ago, on the same night as the dance. The members of Subaru gather for a video call after Taka and Cleve finish investigating their missing friend. Cleve discovers that after entering the game, Nozomi went to the dance hall and then headed straight for the sky. He adds that she is still in Reunion and is currently inside the Dragon Fortress, but it is not possible to track her location in the real world. Haruto enters the game and goes to the base where he finds Asahi trying to redecorate the place. They exchange glances and approach each other, but Cleve and Satsuki interrupt them, reminding them that they need to find Nozomi. They teleport to Dragon Fortress where Taka is already waiting for them and realize
realize that the place seems to have been created with the power of Nozomi's dream sense. They enter and find it hard to believe that she managed to create something so complex right after logging in. While exploring the building, Haruto notices a trap, and large stuffed monsters emerge from the floor to surround them. The group is certain that these are Nozomi's familiars, and that the entire place was created by her. Asahi tries to talk to Nozomi through the creatures, but they attack. Haruto saves her, destroying 2 familiars along with Cleave. Satsuki tries to burn 2 others, but they resist the fire magic and advance against her. When she is about to attack again, Satsuki sees Nozomi and loses her focus. The creatures attack her, but Taka and Haruto protect her. Nozomi's cruel laughter echoes through the hall, and she comments that Taka always cares more about Satsuki. She greets her old friends, and Haruto is shocked by her strange behavior. Nozomi claps her hands and laughs when she sees Asahi alive in the game, but soon states that her friends made a mistake in coming after her. Suddenly, 2 Gnosis players appear in the hall and introduce themselves as the 5th and 4th strongest in the guild. Nozomi happily declares that she has joined Gnosis and created the fortress by combining her powers with those of the clown. Haruto is furious and vows to rescue his friend, even if he has to use force. The clown then summons his familiars, and the heroes begin to destroy them one by one. Satsuki attacks the woman with the veil, but she combines her ability with that of the clown and creates a magical fabric that absorbs the attacks. Haruto also tries to attack her, but his attacks are sucked into the fabric. It's Nozomi's turn, who summons familiars against her friends. They try to make her regain consciousness, but she accuses them of abandoning her. Satsuki insists that they are there to save her, but Nozomi insults her. Nozomi pulls out a strand of hair and sends it through the magical fabric to Asahi. Unnoticed, the strand turns into a small 2-headed snake that bites her. Asahi screams in pain as she relives a bitter memory in which Haruto refused to trust her ability to predict the future, almost putting everyone in danger. He refused to admit his mistake and argued with her, and the memory intensified by the dream causes her to break down, saying she doesn't like Haruto. The 2 members of Ganos disappear along with Nozomi, promising that they will meet again soon. The fortress begins to crumble, and Satsuki flies in to rescue her friends from danger. They return to base, where Asahi recovers from the nightmare. Haruto stays by her side and wants to spend the night taking care of her, but Asahi assures him that she is fine and asks him to focus his efforts on bringing Nozomi back. Soon Satsuki and Cleave arrive, informing them that Taka has mobilized the Illuminati Guild to search for her. Cleave advises Haruto and Satsuki to log out of the game and rest, since it is nighttime in Japan, while he remains with Asahi due to the time difference. Cleave keeps Asahi company, but when he leaves her alone for a moment, the snakebite marks begin to spread poison deeper into her body and mind. In the real world, Taka calls Haruto and Satsuki to talk, and tells them that he has hired detectives to search for Nozomi. He admits that her words made him realize it was his fault, although he still doesn't understand exactly what he did wrong. Satsuki realizes that Taka will remain lost if he doesn't know the truth, and reveals that Nozomi always loved him. She explains that seeing him dance with another girl shook her so much that her personality completely changed. Taka finally understands what happened, and how Gnosis took advantage of Nozomi's jealousy. He vows to find her and make things right, but suddenly the trio feels a sharp pain in their heads and a strange dizziness. They realize that their cakes and drinks have disappeared, and that time has changed without them noticing. In a panic, they wonder what is happening, until a mysterious man appears behind them and claims that time is their ally at that moment. He thanks Haruto and his friends for helping Asahi develop his powers. Everyone realizes that he is a member of Gnosis and tries to attack him, but the man manipulates time once again and disappears without a trace. Taka and Satsuki realize that time has returned to normal, and Haruto remembers Alice's words about the possibility of using the senses in the real world. Concerned about Asahi, he runs home and enters the game. Inside the game, Asahi is sleeping and dreams about the incident in which Haruto ignored her plan. Even after making a mistake once, he insisted on taking another path and defeated the enemy in a different way. She was furious at his lack of confidence and said she didn't want to see him anymore, and in the dream he even pointed his sword at her. Her body trembles as she relives this memory, and when Haruto appears, she is startled to see him. Soon the other friends arrive and they tell her and Cleave that a member of Jephus used his senses in the real world. Cleave believes without hesitation and assumes that the man who manipulated time is the leader of Jephuses, the one Alice had warned about. Suddenly the hideout begins to shake, and Asahi asks everyone to flee, but it is too late, and the ceiling collapses on them. They manage to teleport out in time and find a shining crystal tower before them. Haruto recognizes the similarity to the source of the white water spirit they had defeated 6 years earlier, and everyone is certain that only Nozomi could recreate something like this. The group invades the tower and climbs cautiously, always on the lookout for traps and monsters. Upon entering a replica of the boss room, Asahi has a flashback of bitter memories of her fight with Haruto, as the incident occurred at the very source of the white water spirit. The poison from the snakebite spreads further, and she responds coldly when Haruto asks if she is okay. They move forward, and Asahi uses her power to warn Taka of an imminent monster attack, but nothing appears. Haruto realizes that something is wrong with her, and suggests that they retreat, but Asahi rejects the idea and insists on moving forward to save Nozomi. With no choice, everyone follows her to the boss's room on the top floor. Nozomi appears to greet them, and Asahi asks Nozomi to stop the madness and return to the group. Nozomi replies that she no longer feels attached to the team and returns to insulting Taka and Satsuki. Taka claims that Nozomi is manipulating Nozomi's negative emotions to control her, but Nozomi shows indifference. Nozomi wields a weapon, summons an army of familiars, and transforms her own body into a mixture of monsters. Taka declares that he will save her from this condition, but two members of Nozomi's appear alongside Nozomi and challenge Taka to free her from their control. Nozomi orders her familiars to attack the members of Subaru, and everyone takes up formation to fight while protecting Asahi. The group faces an endless wave of familiars, and Asahi is unable to activate her premonition ability just when she needs it most. Suddenly, Asahi hears Nozomi's voice in her mind saying that no one would believe her even if the ability worked. Asahi begins to lose control, and everyone becomes concerned, which gives the clown the opportunity to fire 1,000 cannons and separate the group. Nozomi ends up face to face with Taka and Satsuki, who coincidentally are on the same side. Taka promises to save Nozomi without hurting her and pins her against the statue on the floor. Taka then destroys the base of the statue, opens a hole, and falls with Nozomi to a lower floor. They reach the lower level and Taka tries to talk, but Nozomi refuses to listen and throws a punch. Taka does not dodge and continues advancing even under new attacks. Nozomi is confused and asks why Taka does not dodge, and Taka states that he does not deserve to dodge because he hurt her. Taka explains that he always loved Sahiki and she never loved him back, and because of that he became bitter and distant, which is why he understands how Nozomi feels. Taka says he understands how Nozomi felt bad seeing him dance with Satsuki, even though they were just comforting each other after being rejected, and Taka declares that he wants to take responsibility. Taka clears up the misunderstanding and states that there is nothing between him and Satsuki, but Nozomi continues to attack him, saying that it is too late. Nozomi regrets what she did, driven by deception, but Taka still moves forward. The aura of Taka's divine sense dispels the familiars that Nozomi throws at him, and when Taka touches Nozomi herself, the mind control breaks. Taka says he is angry with himself for not realizing her feelings and apologizes again. Nozomi begins to cry, and Taka hugs her, declaring that he will take full responsibility for the mistake she has made. Taka activates his ability and undoes Nozomi's transformation, removing the evil sense that possessed her body. Nozomi returns to normal, overcome with sadness and regret for having hurt her friends, but Taka hugs her and says that the two of them must return to the group. Taka promises to stay by her side from now on, and Nozomi relaxes for a moment before remembering what she did to Asahi. On the upper floor, the two Genosis players comment on what Nozomi is doing downstairs, but they are not worried because she has already fulfilled her role of corrupting Asahi. The two surround Haruto, Asahi, and Cleave with the magical fabric. Satsuki tries to break through the prison, but the fabric absorbs the attack. The clown tells Satsuki to stop wasting power and attacks, and Satsuki blocks the blow. The Gnosis members taunt the group, saying that Asahi's power will awaken when her friends fall before her one by one, and that they will then use that power to lead the world to a supposedly better future. Haruto becomes furious and signals Cleave to execute the combined attack. Haruto launches energy spheres into the sky, and Cleave hits them with daggers, turning them into clones. The clown tries to knock down the clones, but Satsuki hits him from another angle and makes him retreat. The two enemies manage to get rid of the clones, but Cleave traps the woman with red threads and appears from her shadow. Haruto goes after the clown, but Asahi orders them to stop, and Haruto hesitates and misses the chance for the decisive blow. Haruto and his friends look at Asahi and realize that she emanates a dark aura and commands her allies to attack the non-existent enemy. Asahi completely loses her mind, and when Haruto tries to wake her up, she hallucinates that she is being attacked by him. Asahi screams that she doesn't like Haruto and shoots him point blank. The moment Haruto collapses, the dark aura around Asahi dissipates and she regains consciousness. Asahi begins to cry as she hugs Haruto and says that this is not the future she wants. Satsuki approaches to comfort Asahi, but the energy released by Asahi repels her. Cleave tries to help but remains trapped by the magical fabric barrier. The members of Genos claim that Asahi will now awaken because she has suffered the greatest possible shock,
and they imprison Asahi in a magical cell. Satsuki tries to prevent Haruto from being defeated by slowing down time with all her might, while Cleve fights inside the fabric barrier, dodging the clown's shots. The fabric traps and restrains Cleve, and the clown jumps in to finish him off. Alicia suddenly appears, frees Cleve, and destroys the clown's weapons. The two members of Genos recognize her and plan to defeat her along with Subaru. However, Asahi's cell breaks before the fight resumes, and Asahi's body releases a blinding light. Meanwhile, Haruto wakes up in a completely dark place with no one around. Haruto walks and finds Asahi crying and asking him not to come near her. Haruto approaches her anyway, caresses Asahi, and asks her not to cry. Asahi remembers the day Haruto pointed his sword at her and recalls that his intention was to destroy the monster hiding behind her. Asahi remembers that Haruto promised to stay strong to protect her and keep her from crying, and Asahi smiled at that moment. In the world of reunion, Haruto gets up even though he is wounded, and thanks to his bond with Asahi, he awakens his own ability and brings Asahi back to normal. The clown and the woman conclude that they will have no chance against Haruto now that he has awakened, but they also do not want to return empty-handed to their superior. Then Taka and Nozomi arrive at the scene, and the whole team is reunited. Haruto wants to punish the Gnosis players for hurting Asahi, but the enemies combine their powers, transforming the magical fabric into a dome that surrounds them and opening portals with weapons pointed inward. The enemies threaten that all of Asahi's friends will be defeated inside the dome, but Asahi trusts that Haruto will break through the trap. Inside the dome, Haruto uses his newly awakened power and executes an attack called Leonide Origin, summoning white spirit lions that tear through the dome and defeat the Gnosis players in a single blow. When everyone leaves, Satsuki complains to Haruto because she wanted to interrogate the enemies after defeating them, but Haruto's attack eliminated them both immediately. Then Nozomi apologizes for putting everyone at risk, and her friends have already forgiven her, resulting in a touching reunion. The group thanks Alicia for her help, and Alicia states that the victory was achieved by the strength of the group itself. Asahi thanks her for saving her from the experiments, and Alicia refuses to reveal her true identity. Alicia hands Haruto the sheath of the Pleiades sword, and when Haruto puts the blade away, Alicia disappears. Everyone returns to the real world. Taka finds Nozomi unconscious in an internet cafe and apologizes again. Taka promises to stay by her side forever and take responsibility for what happened while Nozomi was consumed by negative emotions. Satsuki and Clive also rest in their homes, and Haruto wakes up in his room with a smile, believing that Asahi really brought Subaru back to life. In a distant place, Alicia also leaves the game and recognizes that the mission to contain Najifas is not over yet. The next day, everyone logs back in and finds Asahi in the game. The legendary team called Subaru finally reunites and vows to protect each other and become a legend in that world. And at that moment, the first part of the story comes to an end. Like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe for more videos.